The front door clicked shut behind her. Red heels, red lips, that perfume I used to love. "Don't wait up," she said, tossing the words like confetti over her shoulder as she stepped into the night. She didn't even flinch when I didn't say goodbye. 2 hours earlier, we hadn't even been fighting. There was no argument, no drama, just a quiet dinner where she scrolled through her phone and I picked at overcooked pasta. She smiled 3 times during that meal. None of them for me. And then she told me casually, like saying she was going to pick up milk. "Mason's throwing a party at the lake house, you know, the one he used to take me to back in college, just for old time's sake. It's overnight." I blinked once. She didn't wait for a response. No. The house felt like it wasn't mine. Her perfume lingered in the hallway like a stranger's breath. I stood by the window, watching her taillights dissolve into the dark. She said it wasn't about Mason. She said she needed space. She said I shouldn't overreact. But you don't put on your red lipstick for space, and you don't wear that dress unless you're trying to haunt someone's memory. She left to make a point, and I got the message. But I had a reply she didn't expect. Before she reached the lake house, I was all ready. In motion, quietly, precisely. Not out of revenge, but clarity. The kind that only comes when the people who claim to love you show you exactly what they think you're worth. She wanted to remind me she had options, so I reminded her I had boundaries. She wouldn't find out. What I did until she walked through that door again, and by then it would be too late. After she left, I didn't sit down. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stood in the kitchen, my hand resting on the counter where her keys used to be. That space was empty now, like a placeholder for someone else's life. The hallway still held the sound of her heels fading away. Like a warning I didn't hear in time. Her overnight bag was gone. She didn't ask if I'd be okay. Didn't say she loved me. Just a casual, "Don't wait up." Like this was something we did every Thursday night. She knew what she was doing. The dress she chose wasn't comfortable. The perfume wasn't subtle. It was all a signal. This wasn't just nostalgia. This was war. I walked from room to room, lights on, but everything dim. Her hairbrush still sat crooked on the dresser. Her phone charger still wrapped in that pink scrunchie. She never wore any more. I opened the fridge, stared at a half-finished bottle of wine she'd been saving for something special. I uncorked it, took a sip too, sweet, left it on the counter with the cap off. Then I opened my laptop. There was no plan, no dramatic revenge. I wasn't thinking ahead. I just typed month 2-month storage unit, no long-term contract. Within 10 minutes, I had a reservation, a garage-sized unit 2 blocks away. Get code. 24-hour access. I shut the laptop, walked to the bedroom, and opened the closet. It was strange how fast I could tell what belonged to me and what didn't. My side was just a row of gray and blue, practical things that didn't try to impress. Her side was louder. Dresses that still had dry-cleaning tags. Shoes I hadn't seen her wear in years. Scarves she didn't even remember buying. One by one, I began to slide her clothes off the hangers, folded them, boxed them, drawer by drawer. Item by item, makeup bag, earrings she wore to our wedding. The framed photo of her and Mason at college she swore she kept just because it was funny. Everything she might look for when she came back, I packed it. By 2 a.m., half the house was hollow. Not ransacked, not violent, just cleared. I didn't break anything. I didn't touch her journals. I left her favorite mug on the table. I even placed a sticky note on it that said, "You forgot this?" At 3:30 a.m., I pulled up to the storage unit and opened the door. I slid the boxes inside, labeled them, sealed them, and stood for a moment in the echo of it all. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel petty. I felt like a man finally acknowledging that the person he built a home with had already moved out in her heart and just forgot to take her stuff. When I got home, I stripped the bed, washed the sheets, folded them neatly, and placed them in the linen closet. I lay down without a pillow, no blanket, just air and consequence. She came back late the next morning. Her heels clicked in the doorway. Like nothing had happened until she turned the corner and saw it. An empty closet. No bags in the hallway, no scent of her shampoo. Just me, sitting at the dining table with a receipt for the storage unit and a single cupcake. No candle. Her eyes darted first to the closet, then the hallway, then the chair where she always dropped her purse. "Where's my stuff?" she asked, voice rising. I took a bite of the cupcake and said calmly, "Safe. Out of the house. Like you wanted." The silence that followed wasn't just shock. It was fear, and she wasn't used to being the one left standing in it. She didn't speak right away. Just stood there like someone had pushed her into the wrong house by mistake. Her mascara was smudged, not from tears, but from a long night of dancing or something worse. She still had that faint scent of hotel lobby soap and someone else's cologne trying to mask it. "I don't understand," she said finally, her voice shaking, just enough for me to notice. "Why would you? Why would you do this?" I didn't answer right away. I just pushed the folded receipt across the table toward her, the one from the storage facility with her name listed on the unit. I had even written the gate code on the bottom corner with a little arrow pointing to it, like I was being helpful. "You left," I said, still calm. "You didn't want me involved in the kind of party you were going to, so I figured it made sense that your things shouldn't be involved in my house anymore either." She flinched, just a little. She hated when I referred to it as my house, said. It made me sound controlling. When you vacuumed every inch, repainted every wall, paid every damn bill, it starts to feel like the title belongs to you, even before the paperwork agrees. She sat down slowly across from me, blinking fast. "You're acting crazy. This is overreacting. Nothing happened, Denny. You're making this way bigger than it is," and there it was. That tone, the one where she made herself small so I'd feel enormous. And guilty for noticing the shape of her lies. I'd heard it before, when I found the flirty messages between her and a coworker she said was just a work friend. Or when she accidentally forgot to mention dinner with Mason during a trip home. Last summer, I leaned forward slightly. "So, you stayed overnight with your ex at a party I wasn't allowed to come to? And your defense is nothing happened?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her eyes scanned the room like she needed reinforcements. "There were other people there," she said weakly. "Name them." She hesitated. "You wouldn't know them. I might." "Why are you doing this?" She finally snapped, her calm cracking like glass under weight. "You never stand up for anything. You just sulk and let things build. And now you're kicking me out of my own home like I'm some stranger?" "You made yourself a stranger," I said quietly, "the moment you told me my birthday wasn't important enough to spend with me." Her lip trembled, but I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel anything, really. Just the steady rhythm of reality finally setting in. She had counted on my silence, my softness, the part of me that let her cross lines and rewrite the narrative. Afterward, but that part of me was asleep now, or maybe just tired of being played. She stood suddenly. "Fine. You want space? You want to be cold? Be cold. But don't come crawling to me when you realize how ridiculous this is." I didn't stop. Her as she grabbed her phone and car keys and headed toward the door, but I did speak one more time. "I canceled your credit card," I said. She turned around so fast she nearly tripped over her own heels. "What? Joint card?" "My name on the account. You used it to pay for gas to get to Mason's. You can figure your own ride back there if that's where you'd rather be." She stared at me like she was seeing someone she'd never met before, and maybe she was, 'cause for once, I wasn't the doormat. I wasn't the guy who'd beg her to come home and pretend like I misunderstood everything. For once, she had to sit with the consequences. And judging by the way she slammed the door hard enough to rattle the window panes, she wasn't ready for that. She didn't come back that night. Not that I expected her to. But the silence was a different, kind of loud. Not peaceful, not empty, just strange. Like the house was holding its breath. I walked through it at midnight like a guest, touching corners of our life like artifacts from a museum no one visited anymore. The photo frames, the crooked coffee table she always meant to fix, the chip bowl we fought over keeping, all sat there like it was waiting for her to return and explain everything away, like always. But this time I didn't want explanations. I wanted distance. My phone lit up for the first time at 12:43 a.m. Lorna. 2 missed calls? I didn't answer. I didn't even open the messages that followed. I just turned the phone face down on the nightstand and lay back in bed with the window open, letting the cold air bite at my arms until my skin felt something again. I must have dozed off eventually because when I woke up, the sunlight was already cutting harsh stripes across the ceiling, and there were 6 new voicemails waiting. I didn't listen to them, not then, not yet. I wasn't ready for her voice in my head again. Instead, I got dressed, brewed coffee, and did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out the old leather notebook from the back of my closet, the one I used to write in before life became a series of polite conversations and canceled plans. On the first clean page I wrote, "Things I know now." She knew I wouldn't stop her. She thought I wouldn't react. She was wrong. And under that, I wrote a question I didn't yet know how to answer. If she hadn't been caught, would she still be sorry? By noon, the messages turned from pleading to passive-aggressive. She was clearly still with Mason, or had at least stayed near the lake house. One message said, "You need to calm down." Another, "I didn't cheat on you, so I don't get why you're punishing me like this." The third one stung. "You were never present anyway." That was the one that hit the hardest, because for years I had been so careful, so patient, so present. I came home early, cooked dinners, planned little weekend things she always said she was too tired to go to. I asked questions I sat through. Her work stories I rubbed her back when she had migraines. And now, after one line crossed, one night away, I was the one who'd never been there. The rewriting of our history had begun. That afternoon, I got a call from her sister Naomi. We hadn't spoken directly in months, not since I missed Thanksgiving dinner because I had the flu and Lorna insisted I just rest alone. Naomi's voice was tight, like she was forcing herself to be neutral. "She's panicking, Denny," she said. "She didn't think you'd react like this." "That's the problem," I replied flatly. She thought she knew exactly what I'd do. There was a pause on the line. Then Naomi said something that changed everything. Look, I'm not defending her, but you should know Mason posted photos from that party. They weren't exactly subtle. "I wouldn't have told you if I didn't think you deserved the truth." My stomach turned cold. "What kind of photos?" "I don't want to describe them, but they weren't just group shots, and she's in most of them." "With him?" "Close." I thanked her and hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from rage. It was the feeling of your last excuse for someone collapsing like a house of cards. I opened my laptop, typed in Mason's name. First post hit me like a brick to the chest. There she was, Lorna, on the porch of the lake house in that red dress, drink in hand, Mason's arm wrapped too comfortably around her waist. She wasn't smiling for the camera. His neck. And suddenly, the silence of the house made perfect sense. It wasn't that she hadn't come home. It's that home stopped meaning anything to her the moment she left. By the time I got to the third photo, I stopped breathing. It wasn't the pose. It wasn't even the look on her face. It was the way she leaned into him with such ease, like she had never even left him, like our 6 years of marriage had been a very long and inconvenient pause in her life. That haunted me more than anything. Can't fake that kind of comfort. Can't pretend your body doesn't remember someone, especially not in photos where you think no one's watching. But someone had been watching me quietly for years, and I had convinced myself that love meant overlooking the little red flags, the harmless texts, the sudden changes in perfume, the long showers after her girls' nights. I turned my own instincts down to 0 just to make her comfortable. I didn't call her, didn't answer the 3 new messages that followed, but I did forward one of the photos to her with no text, no caption, just the image of her and Mason. Smiling like they'd finally exhaled, like I had been the problem all along and they just fixed it. A few minutes later, I heard tires screech in the driveway. I figured it was her. I stood up and braced myself for a screaming match. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Lorna standing there. It was her mother, Judith, hair in a tight bun. Sunglasses pushed up onto her forehead, lips pressed together like a math teacher preparing for a war. "Where is she?" she asked without even stepping inside. I blinked, stunned. "She's not here," I said. "She hasn't been since she left for the—" Judith pushed past me and stood in the living room, scanning the room like she was trying to find evidence of something, anything. She looked at the half-packed boxes still by the hallway, the photo frames that now sat face down, the spare bedroom. Door slightly cracked open. She finally turned to me. "She told me you lost your mind, said you locked her out, threw out her things, canceled her credit card like some kind of monster." I didn't say anything, just pulled my phone from my pocket and showed her the photo, the one with the red dress, the drink, the arm around her waist, and the smile that belonged to another man. Judith stared at it for 5 full seconds, and then she closed her eyes and whispered, "God damn it, Lorna." It was the first time I had ever seen that woman vulnerable. She had always treated me like an accessory in her daughter's life, a placeholder, until something more exciting came along. That moment, that was different. She walked slowly over to the couch and sat down, her fingers pressed to her temples. "She always does this," she murmured. "She burns everything and then blames the smoke on someone else." I didn't know what to say. I sat across from her, trying not to shake. "I didn't do anything to deserve this," I said softly, more to myself than to her, I know, Judith said. "I think deep down she knows it too. But she's the kind of person who only feels powerful when someone else is small." It was like hearing a confession from a priest who'd held it in for too long. Her mother knew. She always knew, and she had just never warned me. She thought I'd figure it out on my own, or maybe because she thought I deserved to. She stood up, adjusted her coat, and before walking out, said something that stuck with me more than anything else. "You don't have to keep making space for someone who leaves you in it." She left, and I stood there, heart pounding, realizing I had just been given permission from the woman who raised her to finally stop apologizing for being the one who stayed faithful. But Judith's visit was just the beginning, because that night, Lorna came back. And what she saw would flip everything upside down. The sun was going down when I heard the tires crunch onto the gravel again. This time I didn't stand. I stayed right where I was, on the armrest of the couch, sipping lukewarm coffee and listening to the old ceiling fan click every few seconds like it was counting something I couldn't see. Outside, I moved all the remaining boxes that afternoon. Not thrown, not dumped, just carefully arranged across the front lawn like puzzle pieces I no longer wanted to solve. All hers, labeled, taped, nothing damaged, nothing hidden, just history, packed up and waiting for someone else to carry it away. When I heard the door unlock, I didn't even look up. I heard her heels hit the floorboards first, then her sharp inhale when she caught sight of the empty bookshelves and the stark blankness of the walls. "What the hell is this?" That was her opening line. No apology, no remorse, just fury that the set had changed without her permission. I still didn't speak. "Where's my stuff?" She snapped again, stepping fully into the room now, hands clenched. Hair a mess, makeup smudged. This wasn't the woman who left in a red dress. This was someone unraveling. I stood slowly, not out of intimidation, but because I wanted her to feel just how still I'd become. I nodded toward the front window. "It's outside." She rushed past me and threw open the door, and there it was, her. Entire curated image of life as my wife reduced to a tidy row of cardboard and bubble wrap. She looked back at me, eyes wide, mouth open. "Are you serious?" "Said you needed time with your past," I said flatly, "so I made room for your future." Her voice broke. "You're throwing me out over one night?" "You didn't just leave," I said. "You didn't just stay at a party. You erased me. You erased everything we had. You didn't care where I was, how I felt, if I even existed. You went back to a man you once told me nearly destroyed you, and you smiled for pictures like I never mattered." Her eyes darted wildly now, searching for something to latch onto, some lifeline of control. "You don't understand. You've never understood I was lonely, Denny. You checked out months ago." "I didn't check out," I snapped, stepping forward. Pushed out. "Every time I tried to get close, you pushed me away and said I was too intense or too available, like being present was some kind of weakness." She didn't deny it. She just stared, silent. Now I continued, "You want me to feel sorry for you because I finally stopped letting you rewrite the script?" She stepped out onto the porch, arms folded. "Where am I even supposed to go?" That was the question, wasn't it? Not what have I done, not can we fix this? Just where do I go now that I've burned every option? "I don't know," I said. "But the address to the storage unit is taped to the last box, along with a check for 1 month's rent. After that, it's yours." "You think this makes you some kind of hero?" she said bitterly, tears threatening but still unshed. Some calm, composed victim? I looked at her then. Really looked past the cracked facade. Past the rage. What I saw was someone who never imagined she'd lose control. Someone who thought silence always meant surrender. But I wasn't silent anymore. I don't need to be a hero, I said. Just need to stop being the idiot who kept setting himself on fire to keep you warm. She stood frozen, one hand gripping the doorframe, the other clenching her phone like it might deliver her from all this. But no one called. No one showed up to save her from herself. Eventually, she walked to the edge of the porch and sat down next to her boxers. Not in defeat, not in understanding, just confusion, like she couldn't compute that the world didn't revolve around her regrets. And I closed the door behind me softly, finally. But the night wasn't over, because just as I sat down again, the phone rang, and the name that lit up the screen. Mason, the name alone made my skin crawl. I stared at the screen glowing in my hand. Mason, just that. No last name, no emoji, no pretense. He wasn't even blocked. I'd never bothered. Honestly, I never thought he'd be bold or foolish enough to call me directly. And now here he was, as if this entire mess hadn't already crossed every unspoken boundary there was. Pick up right away. I let it ring until the sound nearly dissolved into silence, and then I answered, no, hello, no breath. Just the open line between us and the knowledge of what we both now knew. He spoke first. His voice wasn't cocky, wasn't smug. It was strained, almost regretful. Denny, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need to say something. Stayed quiet. I wanted to hear what he thought he was entitled to say. I didn't know she was still married, he continued. Not really. She said things were basically over between you two, that you were living like roommates, that you didn't love her anymore. That sentence hit me like a car through a wall, not because it surprised me, but because I'd suspected for years that she had painted me as the villain in every room I didn't enter. I could hear him breathing, waiting for me to respond. She's good at that, I said, voice flat. He's telling just enough truth to feel honest, but leaving enough out to stay blameless. He exhaled slowly. Look, I'm not trying to justify what happened, and I'm not calling to fight. I'm calling because I think she's losing it. I blinked. Excuse me? She showed up here again tonight after whatever happened with you earlier. She's a mess, man, pacing in the yard, screaming into the dark. She smashed a bottle against my garage door. So my neighbors almost called the cops. She came back to you. I asked, stunned. I didn't invite her. She just showed up like she had nowhere else to go. Of course she didn't. She'd burned both bridges in a single day, and now she was trying to build a raft out of the wreckage. I rubbed my forehead. Room suddenly felt too small. She said you embarrassed her, Mason added carefully. Said you put her things on the lawn like trash. They were in boxes, I replied, biting back my exhaustion, labeled safe. She wasn't thrown out. She was let go. There was a pause. Got you. Hear wind on his end, maybe from him stepping outside. I told her she couldn't stay, he said. Not here. Not like this. I didn't sign up for this level of chaos. So that almost made me laugh. The irony was painful. He'd invited the fire and now didn't want to get burned. You wanted her, I said, but only when she was curated, pretty controlled. You didn't want her unedited. He was quiet after that. She told me I was boring, I added, almost to myself. Said I was safe, predictable. She craved excitement, spontaneity. She never stopped to think about what happens when chaos becomes your only constant. Another pause. And then he said something I truly didn't expect. Do you want me to help you get her back home? I blinked, stunned. What? She's not okay, man. And I think deep down she knows she broke something that can't be fixed. But she still keeps circling the same places, same people. It's like she can't stop herself. I'm not equipped for this, but maybe you are. No, I said firmly. I was for a long time, but not anymore. And then I hung up. I sat there for a long while afterward, staring at the phone in my hand, still glowing. Like it wanted me to call someone else, fix something, explain myself. But I didn't owe that to anyone anymore. Outside, the boxes were still lined up like reminders. She had no address now, not in this house, not in his. It's just a mess of choices that finally stopped protecting her. But I wasn't prepared for what came next, because around midnight, my doorbell rang, and it wasn't her. It was someone holding an envelope with my name scrolled across the front. Inside was a photo. And what I saw in that photo, it changed everything. The envelope was thin, no return address, no postage, just my name written in quick. Almost rushed handwriting, blocky, unfamiliar. The man who handed it to me didn't speak, just nodded once and walked off into the dark, leaving behind nothing but the crumpling sound of gravel under his boots. I stood there for a moment, holding it like it might bite. When I opened it, I didn't know what I expected. A letter, a threat, one final twist. But it was just a photo, a printed one, matte finish, slightly bent at the corner. Lorna and me, smiling. We were on the Ferris wheel at some dinky county fair, probably 4 or 5 years ago. She was laughing into her hands, trying to hide. The mustard stain on her shirt, and I was pointing at it with exaggerated horror. Someone must have taken it while we weren't looking, probably one of her cousins. It was so ordinary, so human, and yet it hit me like a freight train of memory. There was a time we were real. There was a time I felt chosen. On the back, written in faint pencil, it said, "You were never the boring one." I stared at that line for what felt like an hour. I didn't know who had written it. Maybe Lorna, maybe someone else. Maybe it was her way of trying to end this, not with destruction, but acknowledgement. I'll never know for sure. But something in my chest loosened. Not everything that breaks has to end in ash. Sometimes it just settles. A week passed. The boxes disappeared from the lawn. I didn't see who took them. I didn't want to. But when I came home from work one evening, they were gone, all of them. And I knew that was the last chapter in our shared story. No door slammed, no grand apology, just quiet mutual exit. I started to breathe again, fixed the broken cabinet door she always said she'd call someone for. I donated the dusty yoga mats we never used. I played music in the house again, loudly, even danced once, just to see if my body remembered how joy moved. And it did. The following month, I found myself walking past a bookstore I hadn't noticed before. Something pulled me inside. The bell above the door chimed gently. I picked up a used copy of a novel I'd loved as a teenager, ran my fingers over the creased spine like greeting an old friend. That's when the woman behind the counter smiled and said, "You've got good taste in stories." Her name was Marlene. She had laugh lines around her eyes and wore a necklace made of tiny pressed flowers. We talked for 20 minutes about nothing, and everything, and when I left, there was a slip of paper tucked inside my book with her number on it. I didn't call her right away. I wasn't ready, but I smiled the whole walk home. Sometimes the ending isn't fire and fury. Sometimes it's a quiet rediscovery of yourself, of dignity, of strength, of freedom, of a life that doesn't need to be dramatic to be beautiful.